we should be good to go now.
You still do the money time hats on your other shows?
I just wear it all the time now. It's like the irony.
Do you really?
I didn't want to wear it all the time on Stokastic because I'm like, oh, I don't want to do the bit too much. And I realized like it just better be identifiable, like stream to stream.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know if you were dusting it off for the shows because I saw, and then I'm like, oh, you've still
you.
got it, the light behind you. So.
No, I switch to the black one all the time now. I'm here.
Very nice. All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday here. A little NBA action going up against a college football season that is winding down, but still has a few surprises left. I am joined by Chris Spags. We have not done a show together in ages. How are you, good sir?
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be here with the tan EMac, living the Florida lifestyle, but it's Saturday. It's holiday season. I was out at a 2-year-old's birthday party this afternoon. Got my data nice and aligned after that. So feeling good about it. Excited to be here on a Saturday. Excited to be here with EMac. And EMac, you know, I vote for you in 2028. I don't know if Puppet Lindquist does, but you have my vote 10 times over.
I know the pizza party didn't gain much traction here. We were trying to assemble a coalition for everybody, you know, those that are lactose intolerant, gluten-free, veggie lovers, carnivores. It just didn't quite happen, but maybe next time, maybe next 4 years.
Never give up the dream.
In every oven.
That's what we say.
Pizza in every oven. We love that. All right, so there's already one game going on that's important for you guys to remember. And then we also have only one game in the first hour. A lot of our news drop came in with the last injury report around 5:30. So there'll be another one coming in around 6:30, but we aren't really waiting for that many things to go. So if we look at our first game, that's going to be Detroit and Orlando. Now people are going to say, are you going to skip the first game? Maybe because I'm doing a show, maybe not, but there are plays in this one. So just real quick, Cade Cunningham is out. He's dealing with left leg injury, I think, if I remember correctly. In any event, he's going to be out for a few more days. Could miss at least 2 more games. We'll have to see what happens there. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was dealing with some personal matters, but he is with the team. And then Wendell Carter Jr. remains out with his left foot issue. You will get Goga Bitadze once again. This move also of KCP coming back puts Gary Harris back to the bench. From Memphis, it's just not a season if we're not missing half of the squad at least. And hey, they've done it again, Chris. We are without Miles McBride, Trey Mann, and Nick Richards tonight, and we're going to forget the people that are so hurt that they haven't even yet made their debut. I'm sorry, that was the Charlotte side. The Vince Williams, the Zach Eady's, Gigi Jackson. Who else is out? Marcus Smart and John Morant. So pretty crazy there. We also have Charlotte that is pretty thin. We may be talking about Diabate tonight, which will always be fun. You've got Chicago on a back-to-back. They are missing Patrick Williams. He missed the last game. Otherwise, they are good to go. And then technically for Memphis, Marcus Smart's been dealing with an illness. So he's missed the last 3 games. But we'll see if he goes tonight. And then the main piece of news we're sort of that's pending is what's up with DeAndre Ayton. He has a deal with his right index finger. If it's not something, it's something else with him. So, you know, it's cashing those checks, carrying that big bag to the bank. That's really caused him some injuries there. Scoot Henderson is also out with a quad issue. And then Robert Williams is resting because he's played, 10 games in the last 2 years coming into this season. So he is, being put in a bubble wrap. Otherwise, I think everything else is noted. Anthony Davis is good to go. And Rui Hachimura has returned. So those are all the big ones. We're going to go game by game tonight since we do have the luxury of not having immediate news dump that's going to be happening here with just one game in the first hour. So Chris, I will turn this over to you. Detroit at Orlando. Orlando nearly double-digit home favorites here. What do you got for us? Take us through the Pistons.
So Detroit, pretty interesting to me here. Obviously, no Cade Cunningham, a lot of possessions vacated there. High usage rate guy, high assist rate guy on the year. So a lot of guys here look a little bit better. And I think this is one of those questions I talked about a lot on the deeper dive during the week with Josh Engelman, with Eric Lindquist earlier this week. Sometimes the shorter rate stuff can throw you off. The longer rate sample size stuff feel more comfortable about. Generally, if you're looking through, like, let's say an NBA Wowie on add more funds kind of thing, you're looking at the last 5 to 50 possessions to kind of feel like they're stable enough to make some inferences off of. That said, for Detroit, with Cade Cunningham and this new roster as well, with Tobias Harris, and there aren't a lot of things to infer off of based upon the longer-term sample size going back to last year. If you go with just this year, though, guys like Tobias Harris look like a much better play. So for me, I'm going to take some stands here. Tobias Harris has actually been averaging 1.3 fantasy points per minute in about 90 minutes of court time, which is not a lot. Basically kind of looks like the Tobias Harris of his younger days, where he's dominating the ball, 26% usage, 20% rebound rate, 15% assist rate. The main thing to me to keep in mind here is like Cade Cunningham does a little bit of everything, just one of those triple-double guys that we know about, and he hasn't hit the apex of guys like Luka that people thought he could hit, but it's still a guy that takes a lot of possessions away. So Jaden Ivey takes a big jump up as well, 1.2 fantasy points per minute in court time this year without Cade Cunningham. Tobias, 1.35 without Cade Cunningham. I don't know that you want to like lock and load these guys in every lineup, but I do think there's enough here to kind of operate off of. And, you know, 2 pro players, 2 guys, and Jaden Ivey especially is taking a big leap forward this year. But Tobias and Jaden Ivey, to me, 2 of my most important players on the slate. And Tobias, I'm actually getting, he's projected for only 7% ownership. I'm taking the shot in about half my lineups tonight, just because I think there's a lot to go around here. And Tobias is a vet. They don't have a lot of vets that can kind of dominate the ball. So, EMac, what about you? What are you getting on this side? Because not a lot of ownership to Detroit, but it feels like there should be more, given that you're losing one of the most dominant ball dominant guards in the league.
Yeah, it really ended up being Jaden Ivey. You could make a slight case for Malik Beasley here, just because he's going to be looked to contribute some offense here. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been getting sort of the ceremonial start, that veteran presence, but he's not playing much more than half the games when he's healthy enough to play. So we're really seeing Malik Beasley, kind of float around the league here. Maybe he finds a more permanent home in this situation. At 5,200, he's kind of interesting on DK. 51 on FanDuel. The closer the prices are, FanDuel prices are to DraftKings, the less appealing the plays are there. So he looks like he's going to be on about 15% of the FanDuel tournament rosters. And that's mostly because he has that coveted shooting guard, small forward eligibility that helps fill out 2 of the tougher positions. Same thing on DraftKings. And DraftKings, of course, with the utility position and the slightly different roster format, he qualifies for 5 of the 9 positions. So that makes it one way to go. Lindquist and I got to do a show last weekend, and we were arguing a little bit, or maybe it was midweek, we were arguing a little bit about Jonathan Isaac. I was against him, and he's not as prominent tonight. He's going to be about 10% owned. I agreed with him that, hey, he does have that fantasy point per minute. He's always hurt. He keeps his salary kind of in the 4,000 range because of this. But he only had like 1 game over 30 fantasy points, like of his last 40 healthy games or something. I'm approximating, but it was not great by any stretch, and I was a little surprised by that. He's the only other one of note. Otherwise, Batadze would have been our guy, but he's been starting for a couple weeks now with Wendell Carter Jr. out. So he's just one of many centers we can look at tonight. So sorry, I flipped over to the Magic side, but those 2 on the Magic side are my kind of, I always try to check on their prices, but Jalen Suggs is kind of interesting here. Franz Wagner was, as our friend Fast Eddie Fair would say, he picked it up and put it down the other night in Los Angeles there. What do you think you've got here from the Magic? Because they get the great matchup here, and we've seen them sort of spreading their wings without Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, I mean, I've been loving Franz lately. I mean, the price tag's definitely come up enough. The field's going to be with him about 1 in 5 lineups, about 20% of the time. I think Franz is a good enough play in every slate. Match against Detroit that, not a crazy high total favoring Orlando, about 9.5 points. So you expect this one for the most part to be competitive, down the home stretch here. For Franz, I think that's really the main thing for him. He's been assisting well. He's been over a 30% usage rate, 30% assist rate since Banchero went out. So I'm pretty comfortable with Franz. Jalen Suggs is kind of tough because Anthony Black, it feels like taking some minutes away, being productive as a ball distributor, I think does hurt a guy like Suggs a good amount. But I think really Suggs okay to me in lineups. I got him about 10% in the Sims I ran before the show, compared to the field's about 15%. So a little bit low on Jalen Suggs, but still a valid play in a slate like this where you don't have a ton of games. But Franz a priority to me. I'm really low on Goga Batadze, which kind of surprises me given that I do have Goga projected for about 2 more fantasy points than Stokastic does. One of the things for me with Goga is that the minutes are not the most secure in the world. He is projected today for 26.3 minutes by Stokastic. I think that's a good projection. That'll give you a nice median outcome. But if you go in other positions at center, like you're getting more secure minutes than a guy like Batadze, who does have Mo Wagner coming for his minutes a little bit at center. They could sometimes go a little bit smaller, though usually they're not doing that too much. So Orlando, to me, the priority, I think, would be Franz. And I'm low on Goga in a way I didn't expect to be. But I think, anytime you have those little wrinkles that come up in a sim, you kind of ride them. So I'm going to be low on Batadze today, even though I really don't have an issue with him. He's one of my favorite plays at certain price tags and certain slates. Today's not one of those slates.
So Batadze does, or not Batadze, but he actually will come into play on the secret site. But that is where I've been playing Jalen Suggs. The secret site, of course, is Yahoo, because hardly anyone plays there anymore. And they've even they even on the weekends they've sort of dialed back their NBA flagship contests to the point that there's not always one, which is kind of sad. But he has been perpetually locked in at 23 over there. Shooting guard is traditionally a tougher spot to find over there. And he's coming off that 45 fantasy point game, which was quite the outlier. Otherwise, he had just been meandering along, but he tends to pop up on that particular site. The rest, take him or leave him. The upside is there. The consistency is not. And to the point where we're going to get to another guy like that, but to the point that he's kind of okay in tournaments because he doesn't ever really reach that 40 fantasy point plateau with any consistency when he's having his really good games. His really good games end up being 35 fantasy points, which doesn't quite get you there in tournaments these days. Is there anything else from this first game that you would like to call out?
No, I mean, honestly, my big stand is the Tobias thing. Like, I think the Tobias part to me is like one that, you're differentiating yourself early in the slate. It is not a high total here. I think there's some risk to it. If you want to be less irresponsible than I am and not put in 50% of lineups, I get it. But get 15% Tobias, 20% Tobias. I do think it's worth it because his underlying numbers, like he finally, he's one of those guys. Same thing was the case in Philadelphia as well in the past, where just when people are out, you just want to fill it up a little bit more because he's a guy that can score, but he's contractually, in terms of where he is in these teams' architecture, he's not a guy that gets the ball a lot. So I think it's worth having a Tobias stand today, but he and Jaden Ivey, I think, really one of them should benefit meaningfully, and Jalen Duren to a lesser extent. No, Cade Cunningham means so much to that team, and I think it's not fully accounted for in terms of the projections and ownership today.
No, that makes sense. And for the audience, sorry, I had my mic was going variable here, and I don't have a lot of things on the walls, as you can see. So it was dramatically changing. When I was changing my voice, not by that much, it was making some wild swings. I've got it locked in now. Hopefully that will help even things out. Moving on to our next batch of games here, we've got 3 games that go off 1 hour after this first wave. So this is the 8 o'clock section of the slate. We're going to spend some time on Memphis and Chicago because that situation brings a lot of value and a lot of opportunity here. So we'll be talking, a little bit about Desmond Bane, but the key things, as we mentioned before, we're still waiting to see if Marcus Smart is going to play. But yeah, that poor guy just has not been able to stay healthy. Missed 6 games already this year with an ankle issue, came back for 2, then missed another 3 with an illness. All right, let me tweak this for Mike. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. And then now I'm going to start coughing because everything just goes wrong at once. You've got the rookie Zach Edey is going to be out for a while. Gigi Jackson was hurt since last year. He's not going to be playing for a little bit. Vince Williams Jr. was hurt last year, finally made it back this year, lasted a couple games. Now he's out again. Everybody has serious ankle issues, it seems, with this, except for John Morant, who's dealing with the sore hip on the Chicago side. No Patrick Williams, which does kind of change their starting lineup a little bit because we don't know for sure who's going to be in there. 2 games ago, it was veteran Torrey Craig, came out of nowhere. Last night, he wasn't in the starting lineup. Might have had an ankle issue. We weren't entirely sure, but he was a DNP. He's also someone that has played, I think, twice in the last 5 games, and those same 2 games, you can go back like 9 games, and those are the only 2 he's played. I think he's played in 4 games this year. There were some jokes going, I hope they were jokes going around the internet that they were saying Torrey Craig, that they were showcasing him against the Bucks to see if they would nibble and bring him back, but he's not even worth a 2nd-round pick. How do you trade somebody that's not even worth a 2nd-round pick here?
Torrey Craig's worth. He's produced in Phoenix, produced in Chicago enough. Like he's one of those guys. I feel like was kind of one of those Tony Snell types that would never give you anything box score wise. And for a couple years in a row, whenever there's any room for him to get out there and produce a little bit, he has. So He's one of the guys to me like should be on a contender, just whether he's like the
12 and a half minutes in the playoffs, chef's kiss. That's exactly
yeah,
what you
guard
want.
some wings, do whatever, Torrey. Like that's fine. I don't know. I think Torrey Craig's been impressive relative to a league where there's not a lot of impressive guys who are that cheap and not available.
He's going to be 34 next month for anybody wondering on that one. So this leaves a lot of stuff, and technically John Morant is doubtful, but he's not expected to play tonight. So Chicago did play last night. Their starters had decent minutes, but they've got, with the way the Thanksgiving break happens and some other scheduling quirks, we have a few teams that are on back-to-backs 3 and 4s, but then they next play Tuesday and then either Friday or Saturday. So some teams have some 3 and 4 day breaks coming up here. So anybody tonight I'm not as worried about, but take it here for the Memphis side for us.
Yeah, for Memphis, to me, a lot of ownership going to Desmond Bane, which I'm okay with. He projects really well with Stokastic, 41 fantasy points for him at a DK salary of 7,100. So priority play if you are using Stokastic projections today, and I think that's fair. I'm getting a little bit less in the field. Field's projected for almost 60%. I got 50%. More than enough Desmond Bane on this slate. So my two big stands so far would be Bane and Tobias Harris. Bane, though, really the biggest beneficiary historically in court time without John Morant, does become the lead guard, does contribute a little bit more. I would have him at about a 27% usage day, a 29% assist rate, reflecting court time over the last year and change without John Morant out there. So I think Bane looks good. I think a little bit chalky for sure. If you want to try to pivot off him, I get it. But this spot against Chicago, one of the highest paced teams in the league, not a lot of defense, a team as well that does stay in games a lot. And on a back-to-back, like EMac mentioned, like Bane should be able to get whatever he wants here. So I think he's a strong play. With the field on Jaren Jackson on the Memphis side, everything else here, not the most sexy. Brandon Clark, I think a pretty good value on this slate. About 21 fantasy points of projection for him. He's center only is kind of a downside, but Memphis has a good amount of plays, I think, in particular because of the pace. Even Luke Kennard, I think, looks not bad, but Bane's the key play in EMac. So, I mean, are you going to go with the chalk Bane here? Because certainly a cash game play for people playing EMac and cash today, but I think for tournaments, it's a lot of ownership going to Bane. You could probably pivot around it if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to drop the link to the free DFS building blocks article. He was actually the cover boy today. I think just with everything that you mentioned there, the situation, the lack, Alex Caruso's not there as a stopper. Patrick Williams is a really good defender as well. He's not there. The back-to-back, this is not really a Chicago team that plays a ton of defense. Bottom 3 in defensive efficiency from a variety of different time frames and standpoints here. So I think it's a really good matchup for Bane. Yes, I like to build kind of my main lineups. He will be on my Yahoo lineup. I just run one over there, and those are kind of the guys I'm making stands on. Typically, the players there end up being I'm over-owned on the field when I'm playing DraftKings as well, and then I'm letting other value plays carry me to the whatever stars and scrubs I get to outside of that like five core players. But Bane is going to be one of those tonight for me. Another one that's popping up is a little bit of Scottie Pippen Jr. He is much more appealing on FanDuel. He is 5,400 on FanDuel. So that's having him come in at 47% popularity there on, I've got to get my filters here. On DraftKings, I think he's 62 or 6,300. So he's basically, 6,700. So he's barely going to get 2 or 3%. So knowing your sites, understanding where you're going to go. Like I was talking about the Jalen Suggs for all of you who are even playing Yahoo. I see a couple of people like, oh, thanks for reminding me. I've got some money over there. They're not going to go bankrupt, but you may not have contests to play there outside of NFL Sundays for much longer. But know your sites. Know understand the ins and outs of the roster construction, the scoring. You mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr. He's another guy I'm high on. He's probably also going to be in my Yahoo lineup. Love him on FanDuel. 3 points for blocks and steals. He's 2 years removed from being the defensive player of the year. Plus, he gets more offensive opportunities when the other players are out, and they are out in droves at this point. The only thing, gosh, I just wish he could rebound, Chris. He's not the rebounder that you would think from him, but he's a really good fantasy option here. So it's really sort of a 3-horse race there on Memphis for me. And kind of 2 on DraftKings, which is where I'm playing my 100 lineup. So Bane and Jaren Jackson are going to be my 2 main guys there.
Yeah, I mean, really high total for Memphis. I mean, I think one of the highest, might be the highest total in the slate right now.
Is it 247? That's what it was earlier today.
Yeah, and for Memphis, 124.5 on their side, which is like really high too. I think is the highest on the slate. And the pace too. 2 teams like Memphis, even though they do historically, people think they're a slower team. They are technically playing a little bit ahead of pace for Chicago this year, 102.9 pace compared to 102.8. So this should be the highest pace game on the slate. Really fundamentally, whatever you want to play in this game, you can. But I think the price tags for Bane, Jaren Jackson, Brandon Clark, and Luke Kennard stand out the most to me. But really, you can make the case whoever you want. I know people in chat debating, oh, Bane versus Jaren Jackson. You'll play Jaren Jackson tonight. You're going to get pretty good leverage on the Bane ownership, but Bane's like the lead guy. So, take that as you may.
Yeah. We just got a couple pieces of news. Well, only one relevant piece of news here from the Chicago side. Jalen Smith is questionable. He's only missed 2 games this year, but as we saw in his time with the Pacers, he's always perpetually dinged up with something. So you don't really want to trust him. We mentioned Torrey Craig. We don't have the starting lineup. If Craig's not in the starting lineup, you can't trust him. It'll be interesting to see what they go with here. I would assume they're going to go with Ayo. Again, just based upon who's like if Zach Edey were there or some other stuff, I could see him maybe going with Craig or going a little bit bigger, but I don't think they're going to need to tonight. So that makes Torrey Craig a very risky play. So what do you have here on the Chicago side? Because
Chicago, I would assume it looks like the priority
Vooch, play. Baby, Vooch he was good last night.
Vooch went nuts yesterday. The price tags have come up a little bit for Vooch, a little bit for Levine. I think they're a little bit of a tougher play today. The field's not going to be that much. Both guys under 10%. I'm around 5% on both Vooch and Levine. With that, Dosunmu played 38 minutes yesterday. If there's one guy who's sort of, I would say, minutes proof in this lineup where they'll trot him back out for another 38 today if they have to. I think it's Dosunmu, so I'm with EMac. I think Dosunmu starts again, most likely, barring something weird with Torrey Craig. You can't fully account for that. Dosunmu, though, has been a priority play for me in a lot of slates lately. The price tag's a little bit low. He's projected today for 32.9 minutes. He was legit 5 minutes above that yesterday, so he can really pay off on that front. Assisting at a good clip, rebounding at a good clip. All these guys' rates get a little bit better without Patrick Williams off the floor in a way that doesn't make the most sense. Levine in particular kind of becomes a more effective player across everything, averaging about a 1.25 fantasy sports minute in court time without Patrick Williams on the court. So don't know if that's small sample size stuff or Levine meaningfully benefits because there just isn't that third wing to get the ball to and try to create a few times amidst possessions. But like Chicago overall, I think they're not as appealing as some of the Memphis side. But Dosunmu to me is like a core play today. I'll get him about 43%. Fields at 35. Everybody else here, if you got 10% or so, I think it wouldn't be crazy. Giddey's minutes are the toughest, but he was a key part of tournament winning lineups yesterday, or at least top lineups amidst the GPP winning, kind of front yesterday. So Giddey I'm okay with, but I think Dosunmu is kind of the play here. And if you wanted to fade him, I actually don't even know what you would do. I'm not crazy about Vooch and Levine though, EMac. I feel like their price tags being up enough. I don't know these guys if they're going to be a little more expensive. The ceiling is there sometimes, but they take enough away, and Kobe White kind of looms as well as a guy that is not going to project well enough today, but he can explode at any day now. He's 1% owned. So not saying to play him, but there's a lot of guys competing here when the price tags come up.
Yeah, and it actually helped them last night that Craig didn't end up playing. If you're looking at their box score, they had going from memory, they had 2 guys with less than 10 minutes, and then 3 in that 14 to 20 range, and only one person was at 20. So it just, they're a top heavy unit here. They're on the 3 and 4. So I could see some of their key players, maybe if it's a game that gets out of hand in the fourth quarter, that's when I could see some of the players resting. We'll talk about that a little bit with the Bucks as well, but it's one of those situations where I don't want to over plan for it. But Chicago is kind of like the whack-a-mole. About every other game, maybe every 3 games that they play, one of their players, just with the way the salary algorithms have been working, stands out prominently. Last night it was Zach Levine. Sort of disappointed till he didn't, but then he didn't crush either, despite the team putting up oodles of points here. So it's one of those where your mileage may vary, as some would say. But,
also, Eric in chat asking him, great Eric's here in the room across the board. But Eric Humphrey's asking, Buzelis a GPP play. At his salary, I think he is one. He was projected earlier for about 20 minutes. I think that he looks like an interesting play at, let me see. He's minimum salary still, I believe.
Yeah, he was the guy at 20 minutes yesterday.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, he's about 10.5% projected ownership. I'm with the field on that. Not a crazy projection overall, but I have him at 17.3 today compared to about 15 from Stokastic. So Buzelis in play. If the Bulls were to go, hey, it's the second night of a back-to-back and were to get weird, Buzelis probably pops off even more. So on a slate where there isn't crazy value, I think Buzelis is in play, but it's a 3K minimum salary guy, and he's not the Antonio Reeves, Jalen Tysons of earlier in the week. He's like okay enough and gonna get some minutes, but he's not a starter. So Buzelis okay, but don't build everything you're doing tonight around him.
yeah, I want to see if, because I know he had 4 fouls last night, but that looks like that's an outlier game. Let's see what his per 36 are, but a lot of his games he plays less than 10 minutes. So we want to see the per 36 numbers here. So 4.2 fouls per game. Yeah, a little bit foul prone, but he's not going to get enough minutes that's going to matter. So I suspect he's reasonable placeholder value now. Between what we see happens in the first game until we get to the wave of the second games, he's probably going to fall out of favor. I don't know that he would get, unless he's the surprise starter, I don't know that he would get more than 10%. I think he'll only go backwards from that number. But hey, these are the ones where you're like, oh, would have been nice to have that guy at the minimum salary that got 23 fantasy points that just made everything else work. So those are the key things that you're going to want to think about. Anything else from this game?
No. I mean, I think the main thing for me in this one is Dasunmu. Like, I'm really comfortable with him. I'm a little bit under on Giddey, a little bit under on Levine, a little bit under on Vooch, a little bit under on Jalen Smith, a little bit under on Dalen Terry. Those guys, I think, appropriately owned by the field. If you want to be with the field on it, a little bit above, I get it. To me, Dasunmu, though, is like the one where it's, he makes lineups work really well. So I like Dasunmu, produces well, assists well. They need that right now because they just don't have those guys they trust. And Giddey, for whatever reason, Giddey's kind of fallen out of favor already.
All right, we're going to talk quickly here before that next news drop comes in about the Stokastic offer that we have. We call this the link join offer because if you go to the link, you can join a whole bunch of different sites if you are not already a member there. There are calls to action for 11 different sites here, mostly sports wagering and pick'em sites because those are the ones you guys haven't signed up for yet, but we still got DraftKings on there and their pick six version of their game. But if you follow the instructions on this page for whichever site, some of them it's you need to bet your first bet needs to be X for your pick'em card or a wager. You take a screenshot of your welcome email, your settled bet, and send it to Stokastic, support at stokastic.com, and you will get 1 month of your choice of sims for any of the sports. So basketball or football are the two, but you can stack these. So say there's 3 sites you haven't signed up for, you could get 3 months of NFL to take you through the playoffs. You could get 3 months of NBA. You could go 2-1. It's not a bad way to go. Check this out. This is one of our best offers we've put forth. And I see several sites on here. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have not signed up for, probably a Vivid Picks, maybe a Rebet, one of those. There's a little something for everyone here. Or perhaps your wife or mom wants to sign up for one of these. Wouldn't that be something? It's the holidays. They're almost here. I'm just putting thoughts out there. That's all I'm doing. All right.
Slightly
Chris.
Advocating for fraud.
What? What the fraud? No.
You're like, take your woman's phone. Yeah, you got a lady in the house. Go grab her stuff and join the link join. Your mom's senile. Take her phone and go grab her computer. She knows what her computer is. Have some fun with it. It's Saturday.
So a fun joke or a funny story. So last year, my mom came out to stay with us in Florida for the winter, and she was celebrating her 80th birthday. So on her 80th birthday, we were doing NFL Sunday Night Live before lock. I was with Neil, so she popped on to say hello and collect some birthday wishes from everybody. So,
I do believe I saw that one actually, and Mama EMac holding together well. Especially
she's chugging right along there,
And honestly, the chat was
80,
fairly appropriate. Like there was not really weird comments, given that the internet could be. Mac, you've been doing this.
Been around a long time, so we can see that. All right, let's get back into the fun here, Chris. I'm going to hand this one over to you. Portland at Houston. Houston suddenly become a good defensive team. Fred VanVleet may have found the offense that he seemingly left in Canada. There was, something with the airlines when he was moving from Canada into to go playing for Houston last year, but he seems to be coming around. Couple injury items of note. We did mention Robert Williams is out, Time Lord. Jeremy Grant is questionable with an illness. DeAndre Ayton unlikely to play. He's doubtful. Scoot Henderson is out, but Anthony Simons is in. What do you like from this one? Because normally this would be a bit of a barn burner, but Houston's tightened up on defense enough, and they're going against a team that kind of dysfunctional on offense.
Yeah, Houston, not a ton of pace going their way. Technically a pace-up matchup with Portland having about 99.9 possessions on the year. Portland having 100.3, or Houston having 100.3. I flipped that, I think. Point being, though, Portland, I'm surprised nobody projects terribly well for me. Anthony Simons looks the best, but I only got 4% of him in the sim I ran before the show. Use Stokastic's information, so I like Simons theoretically. The main thing is not having Ayton in there, who is doubtful right now, but likely not to play. Not having also Robert Williams in there, as EMac mentioned. Some center minutes to go around, some usage to go around. Klingon looks like the key play here. I am low on Klingon as well. I got 7% Klingon. Feel to be at 15%. The issue is the minutes projection, only projected for 24.2 minutes by Stokastic. So they're projecting the minutes at the 5 to be kind of chopped up there, as opposed to, let's say, Klingon being the big beneficiary. If you were to deviate from that and try to play Klingon being a guy who could suddenly play 30, he probably could potentially be a monster for you, averaging 1.14 fantasy points per minute on the year. But I'm not there on Klingon, and it kind of bums me out because I really thought that'd be an obvious semi-value play at 4,700 on DK, and it's not really there. Really, despite the lack of guys for Portland today, I got Denny Avdia 13%, nothing more than that. There's just not a big leap to make here, even though Portland, just a lot of vacancy of touches to go around, a lot of usage that's available now. The guys being out, and if Grant were out, especially, I think that might open things up more. But nobody here stands out. They're kind of appropriately priced. Even guys like Delano Banton have been priced up enough where it's hard to really get there and feel good about that. So Banton's at 5,200, which is crazy, but a great producer. Take tournament shots here if you need to, but nobody stands out to me besides Avdia.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm landing as well. I mean, we saw this exact same matchup last night. Now we're missing some more key pieces here. They lost by 30. You can't write Portland off because somehow they did manage to beat the Timberwolves in back-to-back games in Portland about 10 days ago. So that was kind of unexpected and weird, but we've seen a lot of oddities, but this just seems like a spot where Houston has enough defense, enough solid players, and everybody's kind of buying into it. As long as Dylan Brooks is out there agitating, he had 28 points last night. As long as he's out there agitating, they'll be just fine. When you look to, I was very high on Alperen Şengün last night. I'm sort of shying away from it tonight, even though it's the same matchup. It's a good one, and it's not because of what happened last night. It's more of just I like some different options. There's enough new players in the player pool that it's changing the construction of my lineups and what I wanted to do. But anything stand out on the Houston side, or are these just I got Fred VanVleet or Tari Eason or Şengün or Brooks or whomever it is in my lineup? Okay, I'm good with that kind of a situation.
I got a lot of these guys mixed in the lineup. Şengün, I always have a little bit higher projected than the field does or that the general industry does. So I'm comfortable with that, even though I agree with EMac. Like the blowout yesterday did kind of hurt Şengün's upside a little bit. And today he projects well enough, but you certainly have some risk here in a game where there is about a 15-point differential in total. It's not the best overall to expect there to be a competitive game, even though never predict blowouts. You guys know that about DFS at this point. But Şengün would be the priority for me at center. Just we know he has the 50, 60 fantasy point upside, maybe more than that in some spots. Şengün, I think, good in this spot, especially with no center really going against him, is a positive. Like Klingon is a guy who is a big body dude. People have compared him to Rudy Gobert, but in reality, he's just not all the way there. And somebody like Şengün, who is a little bit aggressive, can probably draw some fouls against them. If you're going to play Klingon tonight at, as chalk or as a higher ownership play, I feel like your really big risk is that Şengün draws 2 fouls at him, then another foul, and then he's done, and they're going small the rest of the game. Houston, besides that, I'm basically with the field on everybody. Got a little bit more on Amin Thompson. I'm usually higher than the field on Tari Eason. Had the big day yesterday. I got 9% of him here. He's projected for 8%. He looks fine. The price tags come up enough, but small forward, power forward with that good per minute production. I think Tari Eason is always somebody in a tournament lineup I'm willing to get to. I got no Fred VanVleet. That's the one stand here that I'm kind of willing to go with. His rates are just down so much on the year. Jalen Green takes a lot away. Sometimes these guys alternate point guard possessions. And as a result, it just ends up being a thing that ends up a little bit of morass. Van Vliet can go off. He's 15% owned today. I'll have 0. That's really the one stand I have here. Everybody else, I'm kind of matchy with the field / and range. Besides, Amin Thompson, I'm over on.
All right, our final game in the 8 o'clock hour is the Hornets at the Bucks. Last Saturday, the Hornets somehow won by 1 point. So the Bucks not going to be sleeping on this one. Bucks are another team that have played quite a few games recently. The only Giannis last night ended up playing all but the last 30 seconds of the fourth quarter. It was kind of maintenance mode there against Indianapolis, and the game got down to the lead was cut to 6 briefly in the fourth quarter, but I think they ended up winning by 11, and I think there was like an 8.3 or an 8.9 average deficit for the Pacers throughout the whole fourth quarter. So it wasn't like the starters were going super hard there from that standpoint. So the thing we like about Charlotte, not the best on defense here. That opens things up for Milwaukee. Milwaukee also not the best on defense. Surprisingly, the last 3 games haven't been bad with Dame Lillard back. That's a mirage and a small sample size. So we want to be careful with that. But LaMelo Ball looks really good for Charlotte, who's going to be without Miles Bridges, Trey Mann, and Nick Richards. You've got Brandon Miller, who's coming off a 60-burger. He ended up playing in overtime. LaMelo Ball played in overtime in the last game, but he picked up a 6th foul right at the start of overtime. So it ended up being Brandon Miller carrying the load there. And then the guy of the night, Moussa Diabate. You get this one right, great. What is he going to do? We don't know. In his last 5 games, he has 2 games where he's gone 6 of 7 from the field. His last 2 games, 0 for 2, 0 for 2. Rebounds, 23 in the last 2 games. He is a rebounding machine, adequate on blocks, but his offense is putbacks and dunks. So in the last game against the Bucks, I think he had 14 rebounds. 10 were on offense. That's how you go 6 for 7. He's just putting them back up into the basket there. I don't know rationally what to do. So I spent way too much time looking at him this morning, because at first I'm like, it's a trap, write him off. And then you start looking at his numbers and his rates and all that, and you're like, dear God, this could be the perfect specimen for a tournament, because when he goes off, he goes off. So what do you think about Moussa tonight here?
I think Mousa's an interesting play. I got him about 47% compared to the field's 26. I'm with you on the concept you're talking about. Like, I agree that he's not a fully fleshed out player, but he is averaging a 25% rebound rate on the year, which is like really strong. Been about 0.96 fantasy points per minute. I'm at 0.98 for tonight. So we're not talking about anything that crazy. The main thing for him, breaking news alert. Oh no, but it's Mayor Quimby being sad. We only have 20 minutes left. For Diabate, I think the main thing is that he's a worthwhile play. He's fairly chalky. I don't think he's so chalky you can't go there. But I agree with EMac's take that, like, you could see him be rotated out here for, I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't know if they would put in. Like, they could put somebody else out there who can actually do something besides just stat hunt / like Andre Drummond rebound hunt in a way that's not probably valuable to the team. So Diabate, I do like as a play for the salary, but the game theory that EMac mentioned, I think, was really sharp there. So Diabate comes with some risk. I'll be above the field on him, but I think your points are sound. And everybody else here, a lot of ownership too. So, EMac, I'm curious your thoughts on LaMelo in particular, because I've got a lot of LaMelo, but I want to hear your thoughts on LaMelo.
So he was the other core play featured in today's article. So in his 15 games this season, he's averaging 33.1 minutes, 4.9 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 1.4 combined blocks and steals. The kicker, a career high 28.9 points. That is 5 points more than what he did in the prior 2 years. Now, remember, in the last 2 years, he was hurt for each of them, so he played just shy of 60 games during that period. We're still kind of in small sample size, but he's actually been much improved. And it looks to be, God, fingers crossed he stays healthy, that he's putting it all together. So he was someone, the question kind of comes down for me as I'm trying to figure out my Yahoo lineup here is, do I go with him or do I go with Jaren Jackson Jr.? Because that's kind of where the price point is. And then I can still get one other good player to go with Bane. And it's I'm vacillating back and forth here. So there's some interesting decision points on this one, but I definitely will be above the field on him when I'm making my 100 lineups or my 150 lineups on DraftKings there.
So
But
for
as a
LaMelo, for me, I have to say,
yeah,
if
what
you
are
guys are
you?
going to play one take I have today, I think LaMelo is probably the biggest one. He's been averaging, and this is just under the sample size we want to see, but over the last year and change, when you take out Trey Mann, you take out Rozier, you take out PJ Washington, the guys who've been there, 1.7 fantasy points a minute in that court time without LaMelo, or with LaMelo rather, and that's the main thing that stands out to me. He's averaging like a 45% usage rate, a 45% assist rate. Expect that to come down a little bit because Brandon Miller has been looking for a shot a good amount. I think Brandon Miller has honestly been pretty good on the year, so I'm okay with that, but I do think in the spot here, knowing what we've seen of LaMelo, the matchup as well, you run some risk, I guess, that Milwaukee's kind of back to their old tricks where they are looking a lot better in the recent games they've had. Maybe they got door busted here, and I'll be shocked by it, I guess. But I think LaMelo in the spot, if they're going to stay competitive in this game, it's probably at the hands of LaMelo. So I've got him in about 65% of lineups tonight. I'm there on LaMelo pretty heavy. The rates are too impressive. The shorter term sample size as well for just this year for LaMelo looks pretty good as well, about getting the same 1.7 fantasy points per minute. I don't think that holds up because it's like he's basically taken 90% of the possessions when he's on the floor without a lot of these key guys out there, without Bridges, without Trey Mann, against some of the guys that got traded last year. This has been who he is for about a year. So if he gets hot, he's going to stay out there. He's going to keep shooting. So I think LaMelo to me is like a play that I've talked about some other core plays. He'll be a part of the lineups I put in tonight in the big tournament.
We got the Morant and Smart news too.
Oh, so is Smart's out,
Smart's
right?
out, yeah. Or
Okay,
unlikely
yeah.
to play is the official word, but probably going to be out, yeah.
Yeah, most likely going to be out. Malik Beasley is starting there for Detroit. The Bucks are one of those teams that I mentioned on a back-to-back and a 3 and 4, but they don't play again until Tuesday and then Saturday with how the Thanksgiving holiday is going to work out. So because that's one of the things, what's going to happen with Giannis? Well, you know what? They need to kind of keep banking some wins here because they have a huge hole they got to work their way out of here. And I don't think the cavalry in the form of Chris Middleton is going to make that much difference.
Philadelphia light kind of in Milwaukee right now.
Yeah, it's
not the national coverage, but no meetings being leaked, but it is they need to keep winning right now as much as they can, especially the easy wins they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're totally fine with Antetokounmpo here. I think we're very good with Lillard after that. It's sort of like the Houston take for me. Some of them land in my lineups. I'm not going to be angry about it, but I'm not. I don't really want to go after anybody else unless the Sims and the ROI and the expected value and all of that's going to be putting it in there. But the eye test to me says really focus on those two guys, even with their semi-short rotation. Brook Lopez, what he's going to be 37 in April. You've got Bobby Portis, who has just been pure ass on defense and could see the bench for some of these other guys that you wouldn't think would be good defenders there. But they are better than Bobby Portis, which is a shame for a fantasy point per minute guy that should thrive in this type of situation. So just words of caution for the rest of those guys there. I don't want to be hearing, oh, EMac, I can't believe they got 40 fantasy points and you didn't like them. Yeah, they probably can. Some of them are. One or two of them might. Same with Houston, but I don't know which ones, which makes it very difficult to narrow things down. Do you have any strong takes on the Bucks side?
No, honestly, my take today is to probably not play a lot of these guys. I prefer Jokic to Giannis by a pretty decent clip. I got Giannis about 10% in the sim I ran before the show. So compared to the field, 16. I am technically underneath on him. Lillard, I just frankly don't get with Giannis at his current price tag. So I'm not really there. I got 1.5% of him. Legit stone cold zero on everybody else. So Brook Lopez seems to keep hitting for tournament winning lineups. I'm not there on some nights. I don't know why it's happening. There's nothing rate data wise that tells me, hey, play Brook Lopez. Like, is that point? I mean, honestly, under 0.9 fantasy points per minute on the year. So he's not doing anything, but seems to keep winning tournaments. So you play Brook Lopez. It might work out for you, but I'm not there today.
You know who roots for Brooke and Robin Lopez? Mama Mac. Why? Their grandfather was her driver's ed teacher.
Oh, interesting.
Knows their mom. They grew up. Her mom's obviously younger than my mom, but they grew up in the same town, San Joaquin Valley town in California. So she's familiar with the family. So she's like, yeah, they told her like, yeah, they had to take the front seats out of whatever beater car they were learning to drive in, and they'd sit in the back seat because they were so long they could reach the pedals.
I'm honestly shocked that Brooke has outlasted Robin this much. Like, I didn't think there was this big of a chasm between them. Brooke was better for most of his stops, but like Brooke is probably going to outlast Robin by like what, 5 years on his career? 5 to 7.
Yeah, it's definitely more stark than I figured it would be. Mm-hmm. All right. They're asking about Wendell. Who the hell is Wendell Moore Jr.? That's now I'm scared.
Wendell Moore, I think it's projected for like 1 minute. I saw him before on Detroit. He's projected for like 3.5 minutes now the projection. He's been okay on the year, but he's producing in every category. But there's no reason to go to Wendell Moore on the slate.
He has played just over 20 minutes in 4 of the last 5 games. One of those games he got up to 30. One of those games he was a DNP, coach's decision. Tread lightly, but he is popping up about a 0.8 fantasy per minute.
It could be one of those things where people are going to place. I mean, not play, but like people are going to project Sasser for a few more minutes, and Sasser could lose minutes to Wendell Moore,
Sure.
but yeah, Moore is not currently projected for more than 5 minutes by Stokastic. So based on the data, and I always say like I build my own projections too, but they're built off Stokastic minutes. Like please don't go against the core projections. Like that's the most important thing you do for DFS slates. And Wendell Moore projects for 2.6 fantasy points from Stokastic. So I just wouldn't take that shot.
All right, 2 more games to go here. You've got Golden State at San Antonio. We do know that Victor Wembanyama is going to be playing. We also know that Curry is good to go. He's been dealing with the sore knee. And then Keldon Johnson, questionable. Devin Vassell out. So what do you have from this game? Because it has a 228.5 total. We've seen Golden State been really, really good on defense this year. This is a surprise for me from what we've seen from Golden State, especially after they sort of melted down last year. Hat tip to Steve Kerr for and whomever's created their new defensive strategy, because it's really working. What do you have from Golden State and San Antonio? We got 12 minutes to lock here.
Just one quick thing on the Wendell Moore thing, because our pal Rinpack actually texted while he was doing this. He's watching the show. So shout out Rinpack, one of the best DFS players in the world. Still watches Stokastic every day, and great guy too. I love Ryan. Point being though, he texted and saying people are asking because Wendell Moore filled in for Cade Cunningham when he went out in overtime. Still don't think that's reflecting the projections. I think coaches do what coaches do, so it's not an expectation. If you want to make your lean, as always, I would say for any play, like please take your lean and make it count. But projection-wise, you got to default to projections if you're people like EMac and I. That said, for Golden State here, I'm getting a good amount of Trace Jackson Davis, under a 4K salary, 3,500, projected for 18 minutes, so not a lot, but averaging 1.1 fantasy points per minute so far on the year. I'm at about 1.25 today, so I want to take that shot. For Trace Jackson Davis, the main issue is like he's not projected for a lot of minutes, but on the slate, there isn't really a good value play with Cade Cunningham coming out, as we talked about. Like, if you want to play Wendell Moore, you can. There's not really an assumption he's going to get a ton of minutes. For Jackson Davis, we know he's going to be getting around 20. So, like, he produces well in that 20 on a slate without screaming value. I like to go to guys like Trace Jackson Davis more. So, you happen to be there about 33% in my lineups today compared to the field's 17.5. Everything else here seems appropriately priced. You can take your shots on Steph on a short slate. Never be mad at you for that. Wemby's back in theoretically, which should, impact Steph a little bit. But everything else here to me, I have 8% Wiggins because of this price tag. Everybody else under 5%. Nobody stands out besides Jackson Davis to me, and that's a chalky play. So I'm with the field on it, a little bit above it.
Yeah, it's yet another one of those situations where you're just like, okay, I will accept some of these players. That's it. Hard to plant a flag. Final game of the night, and then we'll have a few minutes for some questions here. We've got the...
Are we not doing San Antonio side?
Oh, sorry. What do you want to do with Wemby here? How do you feel with him coming back after a few games off? They have not run him into the ground, nor do I think they're going to. The target minutes on him are around 30. Is he someone that you would like to go after in this particular situation?
So, like, I like the concept of Wemby a lot here. I do feel like since the coaching semi-changed, we'll see if it ends up being a permanent one. But since Pop went out with the stroke, like, I do think they've been kind of using Wemby more as Jokic light, I guess I would say. Like, I do call, much like a lot of people out there now do, Şengün, I call him baby Jokic. But, like, Wemby, if you're going to have him operate out of the elbow a lot, have him kind of create assist opportunities, create his own offense from it, he also would be in that Jokic tier. That said, I gave him a rate boost today. I still couldn't quite get there, even with Vassell out, because a lot of the guys do benefit a bit more from both, Vassell being out, Sohan being out, just a lot of these core guys being not available. So Wemby, not a priority play for me. I'd rather get to Jokic if you can. But I do think he is a play to me that at 2.5% ownership, he's been really good. Jokic is on a back-to-back coming off of having another child with his partner. Giannis in a spot as well that's not terribly well projected. I think Wemby's probably underrepresented by the tournament field, so I think he's an interesting play. I'm getting a little bit more than the field, too, of a lot of guys in the Spurs, a little bit more Stephon Castle, a little bit more Champagny, a little bit more Harrison Barnes. He's been producing shockingly well in this court time without Wemby lately. Obviously, Wemby's back in, so that's going to change a little bit. But I think the Spurs have something here that can hit for a tournament. Nobody above 10% owned. Golden State on the road. I think it's a situation where something can hit here, and it's probably not owned appropriately. Whatever your guess is, follow your heart. Don't play Zach Collins, though. Zach Collins is the one with Wemby back in. Just no utility there.
Yeah, that is the way to go. So we have him, I think, 28.9 minutes. So when I kind of set him around 30, that's kind of like a soft-ish cap. I think that's what we're going to see most of the season. If it's a relatively close game, yeah, he'll go up to 30, 35. We've seen that happen, especially when it's at home. Give the fans a little something, and they want to get some seasoning here with him. But quick hook, right? He bangs something, he falls awkwardly, he does something, and all of a sudden you're looking at 26 minutes. That's a problem when you're looking at his salary, and salary is something that's going to impact all of this, where you'd rather maybe stretch and try to get Jokic. You'd look to Anthony Davis issues, but in any event, that would be kind of my one concern right now with Wemby. And there hasn't been just we don't have super duper value or just like stars and scrubs. I can get 3 of these guys. It's not quite happening on this slate. It's still Saturday in the NBA. Something weird is going to happen between tip-off in 7 minutes and the 8 o'clock games. You can count on it, but we haven't seen anything happen with that yet. So that's just important to note. All right, final game of the night. So yes, as you mentioned, Jokic missed about 12 days for personal reasons. It was second child for his welcome into his family here. He played last night. I'm not as worried about the back-to-back. He is, maybe the time off made him a little fresher. Conditioning, everybody questions it, but then you watch him there and he's just chugging at what looks like 3/4 of speed, but it's really incredibly consistent from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. He's just the same, right? He's the same no matter what. So Jokic would be the one guy I really, really like from this game. To a lesser extent, Anthony Davis. One thing I want to call out on Davis, I did recommend short in the free article. I recommend shorting his under on his rebound, 12.5. He has not done well against Jokic the last 3 times they've played in the last calendar year. And even though Davis has had some excellent runs and he's having one hell of a season right now, it really doesn't come through rebounds. And he's averaging his lowest of the last 3 years. It's around 11.3 per game. So that was just a quick one I wanted to call out there. Still like him for DFS. We need those blocks and steals, but he can absolutely fill up the stat sheet. I think LeBron is reasonable on the lower side, or the point per dollar play. Dalton Connect is kind of the other one that's sort of popping for me in this game. Otherwise, it's the power trio and then maybe Connect. What else do you have here? I'll let you run with this for a couple minutes here.
Before I do, I want to quickly pander for likes here because I'm with my old pal EMac on a Saturday for a while. And EMac, I'm here not often on a Saturday, but EMac is grinding out every weekend here on behalf of you guys to give you guys good takes. So please smash the like button before you do. We haven't asked for it throughout the show, but I want to make sure I do it on EMac's behalf. And our producer, Mike, as well, does a great job every weekend as well, filling in for the illustrious Jordan Klein. Mike, equally illustrious in his own way. I would say for Denver's side of things, I like Jokic. I want to be with the field on Jokic. 70 fantasy points yesterday again. Just a monster in the spot. I do think Jamal Murray has been using the ball a little bit more compared to the start to the year. If you use his 2024 rates, I think you're not going to get right where Jamal Murray is, where he kind of started the year almost feeling like he has the yips a little bit. He's at a 22.5% usage rate, 23.5% assist rate on the year, 0.95 fantasy points per minute. The last couple games, though, when Jokic was out the game before last, felt like Jamal Murray started to look like himself again. So if you wanted to take the tournament shot at him, I still probably wouldn't at his price tag on DraftKings, maybe on FanDuel a little bit more, but even that, still probably not. But there's something there to Jamal Murray now where his price tag is still reflecting time without Jokic. At a certain point, though, I would say Jamal Murray season back open, even though he hasn't looked like himself so far to start the year. It's getting there. Everybody else here, not the most important besides Jokic, getting at least, to me, 25% Jokic, ideally 25 to 33% of them is like the move. Christian Brown looks okay, though. 2.5% owned for him. Getting him 12%. I think he's the strongest play here on the Denver side that's not Jokic, but not a huge priority for me for anything here besides Jokic. He's priced appropriately. He can smash the slate. I'm at 1.8 fantasy points a minute, here tonight. He's just a great player in a spot against the Lakers. Whereas EMac mentioned, the DVP stuff aside, like Jokic has been great, but like he does kind of abuse AD, and I think is a strength against an AD weakness. I'm okay with Jokic being one of your core plays tonight, even though ownership, you should just be kind of mixed in.
All right, 2 quick super chats here. Best plays by position on DraftKings. Real quick on my takes, it's going to be LaMelo Ball at point guard. It's going to be Desmond Bane at shooting guard. To your point, Luke Kennard has suddenly popped up here at 3,300. DeSumo is another also ran there. I think for centers, it's either going to be Batadze or Jokic. And then I'd still probably go with Jaren Jackson Jr.
For me, I tried to do a sort here and it broke my Excel. Off the top of my head, it would be LaMelo, Tobias Harris, Ayo Dosunmu, I think with dual position eligibility would be one. And then I don't want to throw Jokic in. I think those are probably my three that are going to up in a lot of lineups.
Damn, I missed on that Kennard one. I've got him in 69. Nice, 69% of my lineups. I'm going to upload these right now just because we're up against lock, and then I will have an hour to curate these and maintain them. Is there anybody that you are terrified of not having enough in your tournaments?
No, honestly, I feel pretty good about my exposures. I didn't mess with lineups during the show because nothing changed that much to make me get there. A lot of my night is going to come down to, I'm actually pulling up my exposures that I did import to DraftKings. I mean, in my laps tonight, I've got 100% LaMelo, 100% Tobias Harris. Got a lot more Trace Jackson Davis than I would like to have because there's not a lot of value. Yeah, Goga's in some of my top ROI lineups as well. But really, LaMelo and Tobias would be my biggest stands if somebody wants to tail that or fade it appropriately. Follow your hearts.
All right. And then Brandon Wagner would like to know, what are you doing with the $4,300 D'Angelo Russell?
I'm not playing him, I don't think. Let me check here to make sure.
I did not have a single lineup with him. He's 5K on FanDuel. He is 43 on DraftKings. We have him for 22 fantasy points. He's coming in as a reasonable point per dollar play. Interesting. That was a basketball reference. I had not realized he had fallen that far, but it makes sense with Dalton Connect ending up with some more offense there. They're probably
1 minute. 1 minute, everybody. 1 minute.
1 minute to go.
We're down in the home stretch, but for Russell here, I project for him at 8% sim ownership. I didn't get through my top ROI lineups. I wouldn't go on my way to get him, but I get the logic. And Brandon honestly makes some sharp plays. Brandon Wagner, one of my guys. Shout out Brandon. But I do think that I think he's onto something potentially here and a slate with no value, but the minutes aren't there enough to love it because he's just now been phased out kind of.
Yeah, so he's coming in with the second unit here. He has gotten over 25 minutes. Well, let's call it 25 and a half minutes twice in his last 7 games while averaging 24.6 minutes. Those are all off the bench.
The impoverished Jordan Clarkson, I feel like, is what he is right now, which is not enough to play, I think.
So the interesting thing, he's bought into the team. He said that, and now that we're at lock, I can say he came into the season was like, Coach Redick, whatever you want. If you need me off the bench, that's fine. You need me to shoot less, that's fine. I've got my head right. He's walking the walk, right? He's been there. He's only in this stretch, he's barely taking 10 shots a game. So he's dialed things back. He's doing what is needed, and he's not bitching about it and grousing about it. So good from a basketball standpoint, but kind of knocked him out of contention here.
Not the same fantasy guy at this point currently. Just minutes wise, upside wise, it's not really there for him. But I think good thoughts half the battle. A lot of this stuff. This
is where you may want to jump early, Brandon. If we get I don't want to speak this into existence. If we get a Davis or a LeBron out, which we're going to at some point during the the doldrums, once the winter really hits here, that's when you're going to want to pounce on someone like D'Lo, because someone else is going to move into the starting lineup. The trickle down in minutes probably will go to him. Still probably he won't make the closing lineup, but all of a sudden he gets 28, 29 minutes. And it's like, hey, go put some points on the board with the second unit here. We really need it. Then you're in business. So I like to call it. I like the thought. I hadn't realized he'd fallen that low. I don't see a path to 28 to 30 minutes tonight. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, same page.
The path to the Stokastic Hall of Fame, Chris, before we get on out of here, you guys need to rep the Stokastic avatar. You can go to stokastic.com / forget what it is, Mike, if you want to drop that link in the chat, or I will.
Sure.
But rep the Stokastic avatar. Finish top 3 in any contest with at least 5,000 people in it. Doesn't matter what the cost. It can be for the dime, a quarter. It can be $100 contest. There needs to be 5,000 people in it. You need to finish top 3rd. Take a screenshot showing that Stokastic avatar. Tweet that to Stokastic HOF on Twitter, and definitely reach out to support@Stokastic for the email, because that will get you 1 full month of Sims all access. Right? The link join gets you one sport for a month. But this gets you 1 month of everything, the keys to the kingdom. We have multiple levels in the Hall of Fame here, including the Pantheon level, where you end up getting a little ring commemorating your victory that rotates around in a display case. Very, very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that on the Spags show here in the near future. But that's all I've got, Chris. This was fun. Thank you for coming here and slumming it on the weekends with me.
No, I'm glad. No pressure here, hanging out with my old pal EMac. But honestly, really, guys, hit the like button before you go. It does matter a lot here for the stats behind the scenes. And EMac does a great work every weekend here, and we'll be here tomorrow doing live before lock as well for the showdown for NFL. And please support the guys here on the weekends. Like Bellman's usually here. I'm lucky to come in and be a superstar like I am. I get to do Monday to Friday, whatever. But like in reality, like it's all a team effort here. People doing the work to give you guys some good takes. So show some love here at the like button. And thank you to EMac for being here. And thank you guys for watching on this fine Saturday.
All right. Where can they find your fine work? At Splash Play, and where else on Twitter?
Yeah, at Chris Spags. Follow me on Twitter, at SplashPlayPod, at SplashPlayNBA on YouTube if you want to check that stuff out. And shout out producer Mike, too. I don't see enough, but I love Mike. Good guys here. Glad to be here on the weekend, and thank you, EMac, for being a great host.
All right, guys, you can find me at EMac DFS, and of course, follow Stokastic on Twitter at Stokastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.
Guys.